All right, everybody. So, welcome back to Elevated Office Podcast. My name is Eric Mcgrew, of course. We are a few minutes early. I'm just trying to make sure everything is working, so bear with me. We'll be getting into this here soon. We are talking today about a question that Alex brought up, and that question is, should small arborist companies that are getting started subcontract out? So that's actually a pretty good question. It can be a challenge at times to do so. At times it's perfectly fine. So what makes the difference and what might you want to be looking for is all part of what we're going to go over today. Hey, Alex. So Alex Govinetio, if I said that right, I probably butchered that. I'm sorry, man. But he's the one that started up this question. And the question, once again, is, should small arborists, companies, or individual arborists go do subcontracting? Is it worth it to them or whatnot? I don't know what has been going on with my Instagram. My YouTube lately. It's just not working like it should. So bear with me. I'm working on it to get it going. But anyway, so yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind. I know a lot of people aren't real sure what the best decision is to do when they're going to start out in the world of arboriculture or branch off a little bit from maybe their current employer. That seems to be a common reason for wanting to maybe subcontract out. So I can't say yes or no, to be honest. So the reason is because there are a lot of factors involved in subcontracting, and therefore I can't say you shouldn't or you should. I think that you should use caution when subcontracting out. So let's talk about a few of the ideas or reasons why you might want to and you might not want to, okay? But before we do all of that, this show is brought to you by weaverarborist.com, of course, gaparboristsupply.com, of course, and Just Send It Saws, as well as it's affiliated with arbshirts.com. If you go check out Arbshirts, look under topics, elevated office, any of those designs there, I designed those. And if you buy any products with those designs on them, I get a small commission off of that, okay? But I thought something that you guys might like to do before we get started in such a business-oriented topic and kind of heavy. Azeroth. Just Send It's pretty rad. So, couple of things. I told you guys recently in a post that I ran out of stickers. Well, never fear. Stickers are here. So we've got more. They send me these long streams of them and I have to pull them out. But we've got more Weaver stickers, including the Climbing Guy stickers. I don't know if you guys can see that very well on. Yeah. So we've got more stickers. The Weaver ones as well. I'm just showing YouTube as well. So the YouTube camera for the YouTube feed isn't as high resolution. It doesn't do as good with the lighting, so I'm gonna have to turn down the lighting a little bit. There we go. All right, so we've got those, but we've got other cool ones too. So we've got more, but the smaller Just Send It Saw guys. These things are super rad. I love that sticker. Yeah, really cool sticker. And what else did they send me? Lucas sent me these cool stickers. That is just really cool. I like those stickers a lot. And then on top of that, I bought new stickers because I ran out. So I went with something slightly different. They are the same that I had before, but they're slightly different. They are these here. They do the like, you know, the chrome rainbow kind of thing going on. I think they call them holographic, but they're not really holographic, but they are pretty cool in my opinion. So very cool. Those are the new ones that I'll be sending out to people. So that's the stickers that I got from everybody. I do have the new Gap Arborist. Sorry guys, I forgot to. So I do have some of the Gap Arborist supply ones. That one there. That I'll be giving out as well with my packs that I send out. So yeah, oh, can't see the climber guy. So that's the Gap Arborist supply one. Red and black and white. Very cool. So those are some of the stickers that I've got. Just Send It Saw. I went to my mechanic and I talked to my mechanic a little bit. You know, if you run a chainsaw online long enough, somebody's going to tell you it's out of tune. Bizarre, BZ Arbor Care. Very cool. Yeah, he says awesome. Thanks. I agree. Very cool stickers. If you run a saw long enough online, people are going to say that it's out of tune. It doesn't matter how tuned it is. That's just how we are. And man, I can't believe Lucas with Just Send It Saw sent me this tack. Now he did give me this one for free. It's a hardline tack. These are the ones that he has. It's a 2-stroke tack. You know, sorry, the light for the camera is getting in the way. So yeah, it's but it is a usable tack for tacking and tuning your saw if you want to go tack oriented. Now, one thing I have noticed recently is that I found that my Bowman Clan says, we love stickers. Everybody does, man. Yes, very, very cool. The 2511, I haven't dug into it very much, but it's not easy to get to the spark plug on the 2511. So I've got to look into that a little bit more. Like the 501P is great. The 461 is easy. All that's pretty easy. I mean, the 661, I don't have to tack it out because, well, it's auto adjusting and whatnot. But yeah, what I found though is when I tune it by ear and then we put the tack on it, it was where it needed to be. So I don't really need the tack, but I figured I would get one and use it and keep it in a range. Now, something to know that if you buy a saw from Just Send It Saws or any other saw builder and the saw is like really built, right? You need to make sure that you're tuning it to the RPM range that they have it spec'd for with the mods. So keep that in mind because it might be slightly different. Yeah, Azeroth, the tree care or tree service, he says, man, I need a tack. Go talk to Lucas. I don't think they're that expensive, 25, 30 bucks or something like that maybe. BZ Arbor Care says, I changed my name, by the way. I was formerly Liberty. That's what I thought. So this is Brian with BZ Arbor Care. He is one of my newest Patreon members, by the way. So that's awesome. Thank you. Alex, who planted the question about should you subcontract or not, is not a Patreon member, but he is definitely a big supporter, and he is officially my first consulting client for the tree service consulting work. If you have a small tree service company or you're thinking about starting one, or if you want to progress your self in the industry and figure out what your next step is, I might be able to help you with that. So let me know. I can help with you getting set up with climbing gear if you want to get more advanced, or business strategies. Evidently, I'm pretty good at it from what I'm being told. So if you want to reach out to me, you can private message and we can talk about that as an option. Never fear though, the live stream, the podcast, that's not going away. It's all staying. So you will still be getting free content from me to help out in those ways as well. It's just if you do the consulting, I get to answer directly related questions for you and your business and the scenario that you're dealing with where you're at. All right, so I got a few things that are oriented for the industry. So I got new Archer chain from Justin at Saul's as well. This is 20-inch skip tooth 3/8 060. No, I'm sorry, it's 050. And the reason it's not 063 and it's 050 is because, and the reason it's 20-inch is because I got a new Samura light bar from Lucas at Justin at Saul's. And this is for the, what's it called? The 501p. We've been waiting on this to get in. Now, I do have to actually put a new drive sprocket on the 501p. So I will be doing all of that. I'll be making that all happen. I'm interested to see what the 20-inch light bar weighs at on the saw versus the 18-inch light bar. Remember with the, not light bar, the standard Echo light bar. It's not a light bar. It's just a bar. Currently, the Echo 501p with the 18-inch full house chain or full comp chain, whatever you want to call it, is a like 2 pounds heavier than the 201 with a 16-inch bar, just to give you an idea. So I got that. So all that'll be going on, and I got more stuff from Weaver, but you can't see that because that's all prototype stuff. So sorry. Anyway, I was all excited to show you Weaver stuff, and then I realized I can't show that yet. So, should you then subcontract out? Well, that's a really good question. So there are a few scenarios to work with. One, and a few things to think about. One, it might start off well, but you might not keep the work very long. The reason that often occurs with subcontracting to other tree service companies is I find that a lot of guys that are getting into subcontract work and they're working with different companies, it's because they're trying to progress their arborist skills, and they're looking at arboriculture from a different angle than the current guys that they're working with or around. And so a competing company to the guy you might have started with says, hey, I'd love to have a guy that I don't have to have on staff. I can call you in, and the job you can take or, not do the job depending on how you feel or whatnot. And it sounds great to them from the perspective of not having to pay an employee, right? That weekly salary or whatever, or fearing that the employee won't have enough work one week and they had to reduce their hours and then they quit and go somewhere else, right? But the challenge there also is like, if you are dedicated to arboriculture and you're trying really, really hard to be like a conscientious arborist and you want to do a better quality work, sometimes the clients notice that. The clients do notice that, and they often will start asking you for your information. So then the companies you're contracting to, the owner gets wind that people are trying to contact you directly, and they don't like it because now they feel like you're stealing clients from them. Azeroth Tree Service says that he climbs 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, he contract clients for other companies. And that's not uncommon either. And some guys are okay with that. In this particular case, I don't know what your deal is, Azeroth, as far as your setup. I don't know if you work for a company Monday through Friday or if it's your own company and it's established. But sometimes if it's just general tree work as a tree service professional, some companies don't like it because they always feel like you're going to try to get their clients, if that makes sense. And they get a little skeptical. I kind of ran into that a little bit when I was contracting. I was, just trying to be a genuinely conscientious person. And people would actually ask me if I had my own business card because, it usually came out that I wasn't an employee at some point, that I was a subcontractor. And that didn't always go over super well. Now, the guy that I was working for mainly was a good friend of mine, and he wanted me to have a successful business. So he was okay with it. Azeroth Tree Service says he works for a company. Yeah, and he works on Saturday and Sunday for his other jobs, just for his own work. And that's cool because a lot of companies don't really feel like you're trying to bore into the industry. Azeroth Tree Service says he's a crew leader Monday through Friday. So kind of give you some perspective. If you're trying to start your own arborist company, though, and you're subcontracting to other companies, it can get a bit dicey. Some people think that you're going to try to use their company to build your clientele. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that. They will try to poach clients a lot, and it doesn't really set well. So a lot of whether or not you should subcontract to other companies has to do with how you go about doing it yourself. Some of it's fears of other people. You can't change that. But here's another factor that I realized really quickly. I didn't want to be subcontracting for other companies. And if you're building your own brand as a company, even if it's just small, I mean, remember guys, I'm 1 to 3 people on site all the time. That's the size of my company. That's how I like it. That's what I want to keep. So I myself go do the bids. I talk to the client. I do the work. And that's building my reputation. The problem is that if I go subcontract to some of the local companies, even some of the better companies, and we have a fairly bad job, the client's just not satisfied with the work that was done, and they associate me with it, then I've already watered down my brand by being associated with those companies that those clients weren't happy with. Another thing that can occur is if that company that you were subcontracting to starts to kind of take a dive and the quality starts to go down. This often occurs, not always, but it does often occur when a small quality company, the owner has been doing it for a while. They want to try to get out of being in the field as much, and they start running, 1 or 2 crews or maybe more. It's hard to control quality if he's not on the crew at the job site all the time. Now you're hiring more people. You hope that they understand what your level of quality is. And if you're occasionally contracting to them and their work level is going down and their reputation's going down, yours can be tainted a little bit with it. So it's not always ideal. It really depends on who you work with and what's going on. Now, that all being said, it can have super positives. And I really suggest that you all go check out the podcast that Educated Climber did with Troy Tree Guy. That's his name on Instagram, at least. That's not his real name, but Troy Tree Guy, or Troy the Tree Guy, or I think is his handle. He did an Educated Climber podcast, and he talked about him and 2 or 3 other companies that they're all subcontractors. They all actually run their own companies, and they're all 1 to 2 people companies, and they all just kind of book their work together, and they all help each other out on each job, and they all just work around each other's schedule. It was a pretty interesting podcast. I have thought of that concept before, and I've tried. When Zephyr was climbing for me, he had a little bit of his own work, but it wasn't a ton, so I was predominantly the source of work. He wasn't really interested in starting a big company because I knew he wasn't staying in this area for long. So when he climbed for me, and he made a good paycheck, climbing for me, and he just took off when he wanted to. And it was nice because I didn't have the what's it called? The responsibility of an employee with him, but I did have the ability to use a good climber who is capable on site. So that was nice. But there's a couple of misnomers about subcontract work as well. Brian Liberty says, Patrick is an incredibly humble resource in this industry. Real good guy, just like Eric. Well, thanks, man. But I don't know if I should be compared to Patrick, but thanks. Anyway, so made me feel awkward, man. Thanks, though. Appreciate it. Azeroth Tree Service says, even when I climb for other companies, I pride myself on the job 100%. Yeah. And that's a great thing to do when you're a contract climber, because if you do that, or contracting in general, I've talked about the need in the industry, I believe, the need for contract groundies and rope handlers that really know what they're doing. I think that is a niche that's not tapped into enough. I think there should be contract groundies and rigging guys that can just get in there, have the right equipment to get the cleanup done, get the roping done, get everything done, and can have the ability to walk in and look at the job, talk to the climber for 10, 15 minutes, and be pretty much in sync with him. And it's possible. It's just not done enough. So Azeroth says, get your name to all the companies in your area fast. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for contract climbing. Okay, so I definitely don't want to discourage you guys by any means from doing it. There are some challenges though with contract climbing, or well, not just climbing, contract work in general. So what are the challenges? Well, one of the challenges is technically, according to occupational standards, a subcontract or a contractor is supposed to be qualified to do the work on their own with, I forgot how they phrase it, but basically without you telling them what to do. You're supposed to give them the scope of work, and they're supposed to be able to do that scope of work to your level, and you control final quality on that job. Okay? This is where it gets a little sketchy, because in tree work, so many things are interlinked. It's hard to not give direction to people on how to do certain things. Clogger P says he has often pondered that on the contract ground rope staff. I think it's an awesome idea. Maybe it's because I had it, but I don't mean, I really do think that a qualified groundsman that can handle rope for rigging and has extra rigging gear that's quality, I think he could, especially in city areas, could be hired by contract climbers like crazy. And especially if he got in the routine of working with them. Like, let's say he had 5 climbers he worked with regularly, and he learned how they climbed and how they rigged, and he had a little bit of extra equipment that he could bring in. I think it'd be great. Azeroth Tree Service says, I find it hard as a contract climber trusting ground I've never worked with. Well, that's it, right? So that's all. So man, there's so much to this. I'm trying not to get too down one niche area, because there's just so much to contract climb. It's not just contract climbing. When you contract out to a company, you can be doing all kinds of things. You can negotiate that you're only going to contract for climbing. You can negotiate that you're only going to contract for wood cleanup. There's a guy here, has a mini skid with a grapple bucket, has like 25-foot trailer, has a dually diesel. And if you have big like fire mitigating jobs or beetle kill jobs and you want to go in, he'll go in and get all the wood for you, and you can just ask him to look at the price. He'll tell you what it is, and he'll get either logs or he'll get it cut up and off the property. So, there's all these options, and then climbing is the one that we probably all know the best because most of us are climbers, things like that. Problem with contract climbing, though, is often you better be good. And you better, I don't just mean like be capable climber and be good at climbing. Yeah, Clogger Pete says even come with a mini skid. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I'm actually talking to a company right now to develop potentially arborist equipment that's not even on the market yet. That's machinery. We'll see. They were interested, but we'll see if that works out. But anyway, so yeah, there's all kinds of facets to this, right? And the thing is that often when a company calls you in as a contract employee, it's usually for the hardest of the hardest, or not an employee, because if you're contracting, you're not an employee. But so you better be capable. Trying to sell yourself as a contract, let's say climber, for instance, and you're only mildly good. That might be a harder sell. They might contract you, but you might only do 1 or 2 jobs, and then they're like, this guy's too slow. He can get the work done, but it doesn't keep my crew busy enough. Whatever. So you better be pretty good, and they're gonna hold you to a speed factor of efficiency higher than their own crew, because they're paying you on top of their own crew, if that makes sense. It's not a fair judgment, but it's kind of true. If you can't do the job really, really fast because it's super technical and things, you need to talk to them and explain the whole thing out up front and lower their expectations. I don't think enough communication goes in to contractors going into an agreement with, or subcontractors going into agreement with contractors a lot of times. I think that's unfortunately often the case. So the other thing is, you have to have a good ability to sometimes walk up on a job sight unseen and have the mental fortitude and stamina to actually just get through the hardest and sketchiest and scariest jobs, even though you've never seen them, which can be a challenge. Not everybody has that kind of fortitude. To be quite frank with you, I have a hard time not seeing doing jobs that I've never seen before. I don't like it. I am super meticulous about a lot of stuff, and I hate walking up on a job sight unseen and just having to do it, because I feel like I have lost a huge element of control. That's why I don't contract out much. It's not that I can't, I just don't, to be honest. Plus, I mean, with my business, I've got enough work that keeps me busy enough that I'm having a hard time keeping up with the tree service side of it anyway. So it's not worth it to me. And you may find that if you're trying to start your own arborist company, it may get to a point where you get enough of your own work that subcontracting isn't beneficial for you. Now, there are other situations where it might be. Like, for instance, I get called out every once in a while because somebody's heard about me, and they think that they would like me to do like a lot clearing for a house building. They need the perimeter, cleared for where the structure is going to be for initial permits or whatever, or the drive has to be cut or whatever. I'm a small company, and so sometimes for me, the only practical way to do that, if I'm going to do it, is by subcontracting another company in to help me. Maybe they do have the skid steer, maybe they have the masticating head, maybe they have equipment I don't have, and I have to talk to them first, and then I have to just kind of bill what our combined costs are and give that to the client and see if they're going to take that on or not. So there's a lot of factors to this, really. Azeroth Tree says, or Tree Service says, totally agree with what you're saying. Last contract climbing job I had was a sketchy 100-foot dead pine tree over a glass enclosed house. Yeah. Sometimes they'll call you and you get to go out there and look at it. Sometimes they just make a bid knowing, because most contract climbers go by a day rate. They say what their day rate is without their rigging gear, with their rigging gear, without a specialized groundie, with a specialized rope handler groundie, whatever. And so they have these different rates of price. And so once a contractor has used you a few times, then they'll often just walk up on a job and say, okay, well, he needs his own rigging gear, he needs his own groundie because my guys aren't capable of it. And they'll add your price into their bid, and they'll just bid it. And then the first time you hear about it is when they've already won the bid and they've already counted on you. So you're kind of, not completely, but for keeping business, you're kind of obligated to do the job, and you've never even seen it. He may say on the phone, yeah, what would you charge me to do a 100-foot dead pine? And you talk about a little bit, but he doesn't tell you how dead it is. And sometimes contractors will hide that from you because they don't want you to say no to the job. They don't want to have to find another subcontract climber. So contracting is a weird world. It's this world of gray areas and things. Yeah. And then being the contractor to subcontractors, it's always a challenge too, because maybe the climber's a really good climber, or maybe the cleanup guy does really well with certain things, but maybe he doesn't take a lot of care in the yards of nice homes, and you've got a lot of big wood to move. Do you want to hire the subcontract guy to come in and get it, even though you know it'd be more time efficient for the wood to be moved, but now you know you're going to have to be repacking the yard and fixing ruts, and then because they're subcontract to you, or because you're contract to them, they sometimes are like, well, I have no control over this guy, and it can get a little bit hairy at times. So yeah, it gets kind of weird at times with the whole subcontracting thing. You also can easily fall into the line of becoming like a full-time job, but just working for other people. I know a couple of guys, and that's how they want it, and that's fine. But I know a couple of guys who are like, oh, I'll subcontract. I make more money climbing as a contract climber to everybody else, and I'll only work 3 or 4 days a week, and I'm good with that. And then they become so well known that they start getting all this work, and it's hard to turn down work that you have in hand. And so they end up working more than they did when they were climbing for a company, and they're having to do all their billing, and they're having to make sure that the checks are coming in, and they're having to deal with checks that bounce from contractors who didn't get paid on time and thought they had enough money, and you're having to deal with your own insurance, and you're having to deal, so plus you have to do all your own tax stuff in a different way. It does get somewhat complicated. Once again, I'm not trying to say you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying it's not as easy as a lot of guys think it is. Not if you're doing it right. And then there's the whole side of insurance that goes along with all this. I find a lot of guys have insurance in the industry, and when they talk to me, they realize their insurance wouldn't actually cover them for an accident, because insurance companies don't always divulge all the information that you need. So you need to make sure that's all straightened out if you're going to own your own company. And if you're subcontracting, you are your own company. You're doing a DBA maybe, but you're your own company. So you got to have that done. And then there's all these little nuances of taxes that might get you that you don't realize as well. Like, you buy a saw, it should, if it's over a certain dollar value and if it's going to last a certain amount of time, it should be classified as equipment for the company. And if you sell that saw to another climber or something, technically they're supposed to be taxed. It gets really, I'm so glad my wife does my taxes. She's pretty good at it, but it gets really complicated. BZ Arbor Care says, definitely doesn't sound like a thing for me. Feels like more liability. And it can be. That's the thing. So back to the insurance. When you walk on the site as a subcontractor, especially as a contract climber, the question often comes up, where does your insurance end and the contractor's insurance begin? Same thing for contractors. If I subcontract to somebody, like Zephyr, for instance, was my contract climber. Bradley, my groundie, is a contract groundie for me. I tell him what to do. He does it. Clearly, we have to work together when he's rigging for me and stuff. But usually, I just tell him, get this all raked up, and I do a final inspection, and he does it. And he's a contractor. He has the ability to go get other jobs with other companies. I don't care. He can turn down days of work if he wants. He can, I work my schedule around that. And Slat Tracks, thanks for sharing expertise. I'm glad I can help with something. This gets really, really complicated, and it gets really nuancy. So that's the challenge. So the insurance liability thing is an issue, because let me give you a scenario. A contract groundie, just as an example, is on the ground. He's chipping, and your guys are dragging to him, and he's chipping and they're dragging, and one of your guys is throwing in brush from time to time as he drags it up because the hopper's empty and he can throw it in. A rock or a chunk of wood goes through the chipper, hits the chip pile, bounces off, hits the glass of a car window and breaks it. Whose liability pays for that? Whose insurance? Can you prove that it was the contractors, the subcontracts, chunk of wood that came out and hit the car? Can you prove? Maybe sometimes, yes. Maybe sometimes, no. You've got a contract climber. Guy's up in the tree. And rigging goes wrong, and now something breaks. Groundy says, no, he told me it was, bigger than it really was, or it was not as big as it really was, or who knows the scenario. And maybe it jarred too hard because he didn't let it run. Maybe it ran too fast and then it breaks something. Or he doesn't let the energy out of it because he didn't expect it to be that size and shape, and it swings. He stops it too hard and it swings into the house or whatever. Is that the climber's insurance that pays for that, or is that the contract company's insurance that pays for that? It gets really kind of difficult at times. That's where I would highly recommend, if you are going to subcontract, try to subcontract to people that you have a fairly good trust and faith relationship with. Because the fact of the matter is, no matter how good your contract is, it's going to be hard to prove everything and keep you free of all liability. Quite simple. A lot of it's just going to have to come down to conversation, and hopefully the other guy is being reasonable. Make sure the one thing I did learn from zigzagman.zr, Zach Richards, he actually has in his contract that he doesn't do groundwork. He doesn't do cleanup. He doesn't do groundwork. Now, in some cases with some people, he will throw that in because they're a small arborist company that he knows and he'll help out because they're friends. But in his contract, it states that. So if you don't want to do that kind of stuff, be specific. Make sure you have a contract. Doing subcontract work without it that's a bad idea. Don't do subcontract work at all without a contract. Have a contract. Really important that you do so, in my opinion, especially if you're contracting to multiple people. Azeroth Tree Service, it says, when I contract claim, I have my action cam on 100% of the time on my helmet filming my work. Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad option. It really isn't. Even then, though, some things are subjective, right? There are a bunch of laws and things that are like, well, so it gets kind of weird at times. If you are a contractor, if you're a service company and you are contracting to others, I highly recommend that you have extra insurance to cover contractors whose insurance falls through or doesn't claim, or it won't prove or won't pay a claim, or that you have a subcontractor you've been working with them a long time, and they didn't pay their insurance bill on time, and now their insurance is, no longer active. Sometimes they don't even know it, because let's face it, guys. How many of us tree guys are really that great at administrative work? A few of us are, but that's really a small percentage of, the overall realm of arborists and tree service professionals. So I've had it, I actually make subcontractors prove insurance to me every so frequently, just to make sure it's up to date. It's really not a bad idea to do it every job. You can actually have subcontractors do additionally insured, and you will get a notification if their insurance falls through and you're using them as a subcontract, whatever, So yeah, there's a lot to it. Alex says, sounds like a good idea to try and get your work on film just in case. Always. Always. I actually carry a policy on mine that even if the subcontractor doesn't he doesn't fight for his insurance to make a claim in his behalf. Because sometimes remember, guys, little tip for you guys, insurance is not there to protect you. Insurance is a business. They want to make money. They don't really want to protect you. The last thing they want to do is pay out on your claim. So if you have two contractors, you have a subcontractor and a contractor, and the subcontractor is at fault, the subcontractor's insurance is going to do everything in the world to prove that he wasn't at fault and it was the contractor's fault. And sometimes they win, hate to tell you. So if that happens, you better have enough insurance to cover it. And it's not a bad idea to have insurance to cover subcontractors who don't have insurance or that their insurance doesn't want to pay out. It's kind of how it goes. Brian BZ Arbor Care says paperwork is stressful more so than sketchy trees. I'd agree. Yeah, man, just putting bids in. Like, I can go talk a bid all day and sell tree work all day long. But when I have to sit down and actually, write that bid out, oh man, it's torture. I just cannot stand it. Just cannot stand it. So, yeah. Let's see, anything else? I don't know. Do you guys have any suggestions, any comments on subcontract work? Being the subcontractor or the subcontractee, I guess is the way to say it. Being the subcontractor or the contractor. What are you guys' viewpoints on this? I'm curious to know. It's I'm just letting a little bit of time because you guys have a little bit of delay, so I'm not trying to hold back from you guys. There's more to talk about, but it's all in depth, Azeroth Tree Service, just be totally truthful in your abilities. Don't oversell what you can do. Yeah, especially with tree work, subcontract climbing, or even rigging. Don't oversell yourself. If you can't do it, just tell them you can't do it. I mean, I think that should be the case in every arborist industry. I mean, in every aspect. There are jobs that as an arborist company, they're just out of my scope. I don't want to deal with them. Even if I could do them, sometimes it's not worth the potential liability of trying to get it done without the proper equipment. And sometimes it's definitely not worth trying to bid the right equipment on lease or whatever to get the job done for the amount of money it pays. And same thing with subcontracting. Know your limits, be truthful about them, stay out of situations you can't deal with. Yeah, Azeroth Tree Service is right. People's lives are at risk. So definitely make sure you're insured. I mean, I cannot state that enough. Look, it only takes having to use insurance once to make it worth having the insurance, okay? It just and make sure you're covered appropriately. If you have questions about that, you can call me and talk to me or DM me. We can set up a consult or something about what you're doing and what you might need, because there's actually multiple facets of insurance that you might not have thought about. So I'm not an insurance agent, so I'm not going to tell you what terms mean, but I can give you some very specific questions to talk about with your company and what to ask your insurance agent. So, and always remember, a contractor as a subcontractee, as a general rule, and I'm not saying everybody's this way. I try not to be this way, and I have a feeling some of the other people that I know on here wouldn't be that way either. But try and make sure that you explain to your subcontractor in detail what's going on. And as a subcontractee, make sure you ask extra questions. Pester the guy to death with questions so that you know exactly what you're getting into. Don't just go on it with a whim and a prayer. Spartan Tree Solutions says, absolutely agree. Well said. Thank you. Really appreciate that, Spartan. Azeroth Tree Service, great talk, great information. Thanks, Eric. Thank you. Parkway Tree. Hey, Ben, what's up? Nice to have you. If property damage is involved, things tend to funnel down to the party that made the price agreement. That's very true. So even if the subcontractor does have insurance, there's a high likelihood that you're going to be the one paying it if you're the contractor. That being said, subcontractors don't take that as license, because if you clearly do something wrong, then you can be held liable, and you better make sure your insurance classifies for the work that you're doing and covers all the personal injury and property damage potentials that you'll be dealing with. BZ Arbor Care says, I've had some wild estimates for insurances. What can a newer business expect reasonably to spend? I feel I'm spending a bit much. That is going to depend on where you work and where you live. It's going to depend on how far you travel. It's going to depend on in some cases, what kind of trees you're working on. Just so you all know. How much you're going to spend, that's really relative. It depends a lot on a lot of factors. I really can't answer that question for you without more specifics. I can tell you, if you're paying $500 a year for insurance that's supposed to be arborist, you're probably not paying for arborist insurance. It's probably, I've seen some called arborist insurance, but it's basically tree trimming insurance. And that's essentially the same thing that they give like landscapers for your 15 or 30 foot height, depending on the company, but usually 15 foot. If you do anything 15 foot or below, that will cover it. But yeah, if you're not paying a couple of grand a year minimal, you're not paying enough for insurance, in my opinion, because I've gotten a bunch of quotes and I've done a bunch of research, and I have a friend who's an insurance agent and specialist, and we've gone through all the different scenarios, and I've had him look at quotes, and we've talked about the law, and we've talked about what it really means, and a lot of it isn't very clear, and a lot of it looks all fine and dandy, but there's a subtext in there, there's a fine print that tells you it's not fine and dandy, and you're like, oh, I got this insurance for $800 or $1,000 a year, and it's, no. That's probably not enough. I pay well over that. So just so you know, and it's just me. I don't even have employees on the policy. But yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Once again, I'd have to get more detail from you, Brian. We can talk on the side though, because you're one of my, what's it called? Parkway seconds that. So yeah, if you're not paying a good chunk of change for insurance, then you're probably not paying enough. And if you're a good arborist company, it's a large chunk of change, but it really shouldn't be that much in the scheme of things. You have to think of everything in the perspective of what it is. Yeah, insurance is expensive. I'm not gonna lie. I would really rather not pay that much for insurance. But you know what? I'd rather pay for the right insurance for that one time that I need it, than that my insurance company tell me, you know what, you haven't paid for this insurance to cover this, and then you're looking at $1 million claim on a house or whatever, and you have no insurance to cover it because you were too cheap to buy the right insurance. Just think about it that way. Who of us is ever going to have that much money to cover a claim like that on our own? If an insurance company says your policy is not, the work scope you're doing is beyond the policy terms, and then you're looking at $500,000 or $1 million in claim on a house, or death, somebody dies, not cool. Pay for the insurance. Azeroth Tree Service says, just for me and my climbing gear and saws, I'm around $2,000 a year. So that gives you an idea. That's about average. So, and here's the other thing. Some insurances won't cover you out of state. So if you're a contract climber and you're going to be out of state, you need to know. Alex says that's around the quotes I've been seeing. Yeah. I have zero equipment, just all my own climbing, rigging, gears, and saws. Well, once again, Alex, I told you this on Sunday morning. You need to be careful with that because you do have gear. All of that is your equipment. So, like, I'm no tax expert, so please don't quote me on this. But I want to say if a piece of equipment for your company is over $200 approximately, as a general rule, and it's going to last more than a couple of years in use, as a general rule, like if it could be a long-term item, then it becomes considered as equipment on even tax deductions, and then that classifies it from the insurance company as equipment. And so you have to kind of disclose what that is, because if it gets stolen or broken, then they won't help you with it if you don't have it. So Azeroth says, but I'm not allowed to work on a tree on homes like storm damage tree, like if they are laying on the house already. Yeah, so good question to ask. My insurance company doesn't have a disclaimer like that. But, you know, it could be dependent. BZ Arbor Care says, okay, thanks, guys. Good info. Yep, there you go. But if you have more, Brian, let me know. As a Patreon member, you get extra perks of conversation with me for no extra money because you're a Patreon member. Good for you. And so I guess that's about it. Does anybody else have any questions about what I've missed maybe that I can answer that's more general? I'm not trying to hold back on you guys. It's just some of it really is. I could say some stuff and it would be very loose in terms and not it would be very different for you. So I get hesitant to make too many direct statements, not knowing a bunch of other information on that. That's exactly why the whole consulting thing came up. BZ Arbor says worth the money, every bit of it. Every bit of it. I mean, if as a business expense, relatively speaking, you can't look at $2,000 or $4,000 of insurance for the appropriate amount of work that you're doing and the amount of sales you're making and say, well, that's just the cost of business, and kind of shrug it off. Don't get me wrong, it's not cheap, it's a lot of money. But if you can't kind of shrug it off, you're doing something wrong. You need to call me. We need to have a consultation. You're really not doing something right. I mean, I see the insurance bill and I'm like, yeah, oh well, and I go on. So it's just kind of how it is. There's just cost of doing this kind of work. If you don't want those costs, don't do it. Go into some other business. So yeah. Anybody else? Any questions or anything before we sign off then? Because I think I've covered about all I can in general terms. Alex, was that good information for you? Was that enough based on what we talked about? Does anybody else feel like I have not covered something? Azeroth Tree Service says we aren't tree cowboys. We are businessmen. Well, we should be. Remember, guys, the age of tree cowboys really should be dying. We should be professionals. Alex says, I appreciate the conversation and the comments from everyone. Definitely worth the time. Okay. If you still want that consult, man, you let me know and we'll talk about it. As for everybody else, thank you all. Would like to ask Ben real quick if he has anything to add. He hasn't commented, so I doubt it. But if he does, Ben's a good source of stuff, so I like to see what he has to say because he brings up things that make me think about it as well. If he doesn't comment here shortly, then okay, Alex, good. We'll see what's going on. Oh, and if you are going to subcontract to multiple people, Parkway says all good. Okay, cool. Just one last thing. If you are going to subcontract to companies and you are building your own business, let them know what you're doing. Like, seriously, let them know exactly your plans, that you're planning on starting your own business, like as a tree service company. or let them know that you're just wanting to be a contract climber or work contract groundwork for different companies in the area. I know a lot of people are afraid, oh, well, they won't hire me. Well, the truth of the matter is that you might get a job or two out of them before they figure out what you're doing anyway, and they're not going to hire you again anyway. So you're not winning much, and you're basically shooting yourself in the foot because they're not going to be happy with you, and they're going to tell everybody else that they're not happy with you because you lied to them or didn't disclose or whatever. It's a smaller community than you might think. Oh, sorry, guys. Kicked the camera. Matthew says, how do you prove work experience to an insurers? That's a good question. I've heard of people having to prove that. I didn't have to. They just asked and I told them. But if you do have to, then any of the companies you've worked for in the past can give a letter of recommendation and a letter of experience. Also, if you've done work for it, this one's kind of funky because you don't want to be doing work without insurance. But sometimes if you've done work for clients or neighbors, and they can write a letter too. For me, when I have been asked, like for the bank, I was doing something and they did ask experience, not for insurance. Outside of the industry, experience can play a part depending on what it is. Like I have the background, as many of you know, in work at height crane installation, off of crane buckets and cables and, ropes at height. So that played into my favor. Plus I was a safety coordinator at a manufacturing plant. So they all considered that as kind of like working toward the allotted time that they were looking for. So sometimes they can kind of fudge it for you. Clogger Pete says, solid conversation, Eric. Thank you so much, Clogger Pete. I'm glad that you were on. Dude, I watch your stuff all the time, and I love Clogger. Got Clogger in the background. I don't think in the last 3 years I've gone to work more than 20 days in total without Clogger pants on. I have the Clogger Ascend Gen 2s now. I have 4 pair of Clogger Zeros. I love Clogger. And I mean, Lincoln's an awesome guy. McKinley, Arborist, Arborista. Hey, he's from Brazil. Good job, thanks. Appreciate that. Logan for Reels on. Let's see. BZ Arbor Care ISA certification would verify that. Yes, it would, because you need 3 years. But yeah, so there's a little bit of conversation going on. So I would just talk to your the current business that you're working with, Matthew, and ask them to vouch for you. Do you have friends in the industry that have seen your work that would like authentically vouch for you or whatever to see your expertise? I don't want to encourage anything that's fraudulent by any means, because it's all dependent on how it's worded. Proof of experience can be a lot of things versus proof of employment in that industry. So, yeah. I don't know. If I think of anything, I'll let you know. If anybody else thinks of anything, let Matthew know if you have an idea of how to verify experience. Do you have to have a license where you're at, Matthew, to work in tree? Oh, yeah, self-employed. Business records. If you have invoices, you better keep your invoices, guys. If you're a contractor or DBA, you better be keeping those invoices because you're going to need them for taxes and all kinds of proof. It can even come up in court. If you have to go to court and they ask you how long you've actually been working in the tree industry and how, experienced are you really, you have to have proof. And sometimes that proof is the first invoice you put out. We do it all digitally. So, we have it, but we all have it on computer and backed up. So I can pull up invoices and stuff from back then. Just keep it all so that you have proof of what you're doing. But if you've been in business self-employed, Matthew, you should be able to pull back invoices from a while back and show them that you did your first invoice however many, months or years ago. That might help. All right, guys. Well, I guess that's it. Alex and Matthew, you guys can carry on your conversation if you want to after the live. I am going to close out once again. Have to give a huge shout out to Weaver Arborist, Gap Arbor Supply, Just Send It Saws. I'm telling you guys, that 501p built. I've had some incredulous people on YouTube, because everybody is kind on YouTube. But I've had some incredulous people on YouTube about how much I like that saw. But I got to tell you, it is my favorite new saw. The power to weight ratio is just awesome. I like stuff I would have forced my 201 through in the past to kind of make it get through. I'm just like, send down the 201 now and send me up the 501p, because for the couple extra pounds, but the power that thing's got. I just put up a video today of me cutting down a sketchy dead cottonwood with that thing. And so it was 16 inches in diameter. It was like stone dead. And cottonwoods get hard when they're dead. Not rot pockets, like hollows, just all that spongy, nasty fiber in there. And to cut the face with the shelling bark and to drop it was 59 seconds exactly with that saw. It was really good. And that's with the 18-inch bar with the full comp chain. Brian with BZ Arbor Care said, man, Gap hooked me up on this last shipment. Rope ends bag did not disappoint. Yeah. There you go. So yeah, they've got some cool stuff. You definitely got to go check them out. I'm looking at getting a splicing kit from them soon. So hopefully I'll start splicing rope for myself, because I like that. We need to go over a whole topic on gear inspection and stuff and go over that. If you guys, well, not if you want to, I'm doing it. If you want to watch, you can. So, all right, guys, that's the end of it. Thanks. Don't forget, if you want to have me help you with consulting in any of these topics that we talked about tonight or other topics that you have, if I don't feel qualified, I will tell you, no, I don't feel comfortable talking about that. I don't know enough about it. If I do know enough about it to feel like it's worth your money, I will say, sure, let's set up a consultant time, and I will let you know the rate. I'm not going to be outrageous by any means. Probably I talked to a few people. They said I was I was pricing too low when I talked about it last time. Probably somewhere around the $60 an hour range. But think about that. You could save a lot of money by talking to somebody for an hour or two that has experience in that industry. So take care, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.